G'day guys! Over the last decade, I've played a lot of Don't Starve Together. I've got a few thousand hours in the game, I've killed all the bosses many times, I've got long-standing worlds with friends and by myself, I've played vanilla and I've played with mods. I've done pretty much everything in the game at this point, but one thing that has eluded me is completing a lights out world. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the lights out game mode, there is no daytime, there is no afternoon, it is only nighttime for the entire game. This brings with it the obvious challenge of not being able to see without some form of artificial light, but it also carries with it some more subtle challenges like birds not spawning normally, Pig King sleeping permanently, and even farm crops not growing since there's no sunlight, obviously. I thought about playing as WX and using the light circuits, or playing as Wicca and spamming the full moon books, but I wanted more of a legit experience for this server, at least for myself. Ultimately, I decided on playing as Wanda. I'm playing this on my dedicated server with a bunch of people from my Discord, which honestly only really adds to the chaos of the run, but I hope you find it entertaining. So when you spawn into the world on day one, the game is kind enough to give you a little campfire for light, as well as a chest with some basic resources to get you going. Unfortunately, when you have to share this with 10 people, you end up with about 1 grass and 1 twig per person. So instead, I bravely took it upon myself to make a torch and see if I could bring some resources back for the group. Many trees were set on fire in the early days as the group scrambled to collect whatever scraps were in reach of the meager light. The first gathering mission was not a great success, but it was at least enough to allow a few more people to tentatively leave the portal area and set out on their own. Hopefully they would have a bit more luck. And before too long, we had a little makeshift base going at spawn. In time this would become a proper base of operations with a kitchen and chests and other useful things, but for now, it was nice to just have a fire pit and a science machine somewhere easily accessible. It also provided a nice place for everyone to wait while others came back with more resources. Making a lantern is what really opened the game up though. For every 5 bulbs, you get roughly a day of light compared to only 75 seconds for a torch, and it allowed us to travel out much further from the base than before. I brought back some berry bushes. These still do grow without sunlight, so even though they're not the greatest source of food, it definitely helped us out for the time being. And as annoying as it is to have night all the time, it does make it easier to catch fireflies for miners' hats. We got our first Hound wave on night 7 and made very short work of it, and by this point our base is starting to take some shape. We have a crockpot, an alchemy engine, as well as a spotlight for some reason. And most people at least have a lantern or miner's hat or both. But as we started to get the basic resources and food taken care of, sanity started to become a big problem. See, the constant drain from permanent nighttime meant that pretty much everyone was getting quite low in sanity. And since many people were always around the base, this made it a gathering point for nightmare creatures. And the second anyone goes insane, they have half a dozen nightmare creatures chasing after them. The first full moon would bring a bit of respite, except for Woody, but the sanity issue was one that would hang around for a while. After finally making my alarming clock on night 15, I could now use Wanda's full power, and nightmare creatures didn't really stand a chance when you can deal 140 damage per hit. The Eye of Terror was actually the first boss we killed on the server, and it does a good job of showing just how powerful Maxwell's Shadow Prison would be in the boss fights to come, especially with Wanda who can fight from a bit of a distance. Considering how hectic the first 20 days was, winter was relatively calm. We farmed McTusk a fair bit for tams and tusks, then dipped downstairs to have a little squiz at the ruins. Unfortunately, I didn't have the materials to make a Starcaller staff at the time, but we did manage to get a canary from a catcoon, which is pretty damn hard to do. Sadly, that bird would go on to perish as we desperately tried to rub 2 seeds together to make a bird cage. Deerclops went down on night 30 and then again twice on night 31 thanks to the magic that is the hostile flare. My dice rolls were terrible as usual. We were going to fight claws before the end of winter, that was the plan, but for some reason there were none of the no idea in the world yet. I don't know why they decided to not spawn in the first year, but thankfully they did later on in the run. We just couldn't fight this time around, I guess. It started frog raining pretty much immediately as we got into spring, which is about right seeing as I couldn't buy a frog rain in the last server. They took care of Moosey with no issues, but I didn't know where any other moose gooses were, and the beefalo herds were far too underdeveloped for them to handle a plague of frogs, so we had to just kinda tiptoe around them for a while. And frogs are super creepy at nighttime. Like, they just look at you. Ugh. I like to give the catcoons a twig whenever I walk past, on the off chance that they vomit out another canary, and this one actually did. It's supposed to be about a 0.1% chance, but we had gotten 2 in 41 days, so that was pretty amazing. Safe to say I ran home as quickly as I could and put him in the bird cage, and with that, we have now unlocked eggs. Getting pigskin is also pretty tough in Lights Out, especially before setting up the Moonstone event. Pigs obviously don't come outside at nighttime, but you can force them to by setting their houses on fire, because of course, if you can hold their attention for a bit, you have enough time to put out their house and then kill them before they can make it home again. You gotta do what you gotta do. Later on, Speedy and I decided to go back into the ruins and try to make a Starcaller staff. However, this didn't change the fact that neither of us had any living logs to spare, and we somehow needed to find at least 2 yellow gems on top of that. It was a very ill-conceived plan, now that I think about it. It seems the ruins was against us finding yellow gems as well, because we must have mined about 2/3 of the statues in there, and we did not get a single yellow gem, so we just headed back. One thing that I noticed throughout this run, I did die a few times. In fact, I think most people who played died at least once, but it was rare to die from darkness. And for me personally, pretty much every time I died was because I simply refused to put armor on when I attacked for some reason. I don't know if it's neglect or overconfidence or just my years of playing as WX, but it did cost me a few times, and when you're playing as Elderly Wander, you really can't afford to get hit a whole lot. We summoned the Eye of Terror again towards the end of spring, and in typical Eye of Terror fashion, it decided to spawn on the one person who was not at base. And not only were they not at base, they were on the moon. So the Eye lived on the moon for a little while since there's no daytime for it to despawn. Summer is where things really started to pick up in the run. We went back into the ruins, killed Ancient Guardian, and I finally managed to get a Starcaller staff. And with the ruins cleared and our fancy new ruins gear, bosses from this point on fell like dominoes. Antlion was the first to go while we were still in the ruins. Now that I think about it, I don't think I ever even saw Antlion throughout this run, and honestly, that's how it should be. Eventually we did travel to the moon to take care of the Eye of Terror, but not before a wave of hounds and their moon zombies tried to stop us. Also, why did the lunar trees look so terrifying when they're burnt? Like, what the fuck is that? Bee Queen was the next boss to fall, and again, this is just Maxwell's new abilities to their fullest potential. The entire fight lasted about 30 seconds, and everyone barely had to move. Same goes for D-Fly the next day. She didn't even get a chance to make any children. Very sad. After the New Moon Shadow chest fight, we finally got the Shadow Atrium to allow us a shot at Fuel Weaver, but before we head over to the Ancient Ruins, I thought it would be a good idea to get some Vault Goat horns for weather panes. And as annoying as a Lights Out world can be, it does have some advantages. One of which being that Elderly Wander can kill Vault Goats before they can get a hit back. 30 meat and 6 goat horns for 1 minute of work is not too shabby. Toadstool was nothing more than a brief layover while the group prepared for Fuel Weaver. It did allow us to make a few mushlights though, which were greatly appreciated in the world of permanent darkness. And thankfully this year we managed to get deer spawning in the world, allowing us to finally fight claws for the first time on night 94. We did a lot of preparing for Fuel Weaver, and in the end the fight lasted about 30 seconds as usual, but with the death of the ancient gatekeeper, the group was finally entering the end game. Looking at the list of bosses, there are only a few major ones left, and confidence was high. Also, Wicca's webbook works really well against Ancient Guardian. He looks so silly trying to run on the webbing. Up until this point of the game, Vega has just been chilling in the savannah, not doing a whole lot, but since the point of this server is to kill all the bosses, we decided to sacrifice them to the reed trap. A fair amount of it had already been cleared by the endless barrage of spiders, and Vega actually managed to finish it off without perishing, and then kind of wandered off while we were collecting reeds, and I forgot about them for a while. Speedy ended up finishing off the fight later on in summer. Our efforts turned to making friends with Pearl, since we would need Pearl's Pearl to get the Celestial Tribute from Crab King in order to fight Celestial Champion. Pearl was as sassy as always. She told me I needed to plant her free berry bushes neater, even though they're in perfect rows. It's called geometric placement, Pearl. Wicca's Lunar Grimoire book is being used extensively at this point of the game, and it gives us a whole day's worth of free light, and combined with the Moonstone, it gives us a decent way of getting a lot of meat and pigskin. Winter's Feast also became active at this point of the run, and I was so excited to sleep under the tree because it was really hard to get things like walrus tusks in a server full of people that want them. I did manage to get a walking cane on the first attempt, but for some reason the tree locked us out of getting presents for the next 30 or so days, which kind of ruined Christmas, not gonna lie. The extra claws fights were nice though. At the start of year 3, the group ventured into the archives, and despite our best efforts to not activate the centipede guards, unfortunately someone got a little too close to the guard post, and we had to constantly smack this guy as a result. After the blueprints were acquired, we had all the tools we needed to hunt down Crab King. But while all this was happening, a curse was slowly infiltrating the group of survivors. After an encounter with monkey pirates while scouting the ocean, some cursed trinkets had found their way back to the mainland. And since we hadn't yet uncovered the moon key, and I don't think we did in the entire run, the only way to get rid of them was to die. Unfortunately, this didn't stop the players from then picking up the curse if they happened to walk past the skeleton. This was how the curse passed from Terra to JJ, but it wouldn't be long before it found a new victim. Over the next season, we finished off the remainder of Pearl's quests and got the Pearl from her to give to Crab King. And despite having fought the Eye of Terror multiple times, it took until almost the end of the run to fight the twins. The result was pretty much the same though. As well as the broken tree, Winter's Feast also brings with it variants for the classic 4 bosses, including Laser Deerclops, who is always pretty fun to fight. And with JJ dying in what I assume was a well-planned tactic to Deerclops here, the curse they carried passed over to Speedy, who was unfortunately the closest at the time. Another fun benefit of Lights Out Worlds is being able to use forest walkers to their fullest potential. If you have the Thurable and a few lure plants, you can harvest infinite light bulbs and lesser glowberries, as well as regaining your sanity with a Bee Queen crown. The dude also doesn't die when day comes, since it never comes, so you actually have to kill him yourself or he will just stay there indefinitely. And after all the effort taken to acquire Pearl's Pearl, the actual Crab King fight was disappointingly short, but now we had all the ingredients to turn on the Moonstorm, and honestly, in hindsight, we should have made the Moonstorm more of a priority since we now have light all night long. It would have been quite handy earlier on. So we decided to take advantage of this light, and before taking out Celestial Champ, we would kill the other remaining bosses, starting with Misery Toad. We opted for the classic freeze push cheese strat for this fight, which is basically a hold F simulator interspersed with a hold space simulator, but it means that you don't have to worry about boom shroons or weather panes. Next was Melbatros, probably my least favourite boss, and appropriately left for last, not including the champ of course. I was worried that this fight would take a really long time to spawn since none of us had any proper bait to speak of, and it's a 10% chance to spawn her from each deep bass you catch, but she spawned instantly before we even caught anything, so we got lucky I guess. The group headed into the Moonstorm shortly after, on the home stretch now, and collecting all the ingredients went without incident. And finally, the Celestial Champion fight, with bonus Forest Walker for support, I guess. And while the challenge of Lights Out kinda ended a long time ago, I'm really glad we did it from start to finish. Our final time was 190 days to kill every boss in the game, although we weren't really speedrunning or rushing much at all until at least halfway through. It was a great experience. I ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would, especially at the start when it was really chaotic, but I would recommend it if you're growing tired of the standard way of playing. It was a fun little detour. And for some reason we thought it would also be fun to try enraged claws on a whim with no real plan or preparation, and everyone got destroyed.